Hello, this is Bernard Albertson, and I'm really not an expert on much of anything. I would like to share with you a personal experience that I had many years ago in 1963. That's before most of you watching this were ever born. Now, at that time, I was doing what was called outside sales work for a very large corporation. And I had gone to a gentleman's home in Indiana, had a contract signed and shook hands and walked to my car. But before I could leave, the gentleman came out, and in his hands were 2 Bibles. And he said, "May I give these to you?" And I took them and said, "Yes, you may." And I looked at it. So I took them, and he said, "May I tell you something?" And I said, "Of course you may." And so he proceeded to tell me that several years prior to that, a couple of 3, his wife had died. And he had a 13-year-old daughter at the time and was working a full-time job. And his daughter would go to school, and she would come home and do her homework, and they would sit and as the father and daughter and spend the evening together and play board games and do whatever children do with their parents. But he said, I was overprotective of her. And I said, "Well, how so?" And he said, "Well, she came home from school one day, did her homework, and I came home from work, and I saw a boy leaving. And so I went in the house, and I said, 'Who was that?' And she said, 'That was a friend from school. We were doing our homework together.'" Pardon me. And he said, "What did I tell you about having boys in this house? You're 13 years old. You are not to have boys in this house." And he said, "I was so protective of her and so afraid that something would happen to her that I restricted her. I restricted her for a month. No school activities, no social activities." And he said, "I went to work, came home, everything was fine." He said, "I went to the grocery store, came home, and I found her dead in her bedroom. And he said, beside her was my pistol. And he said there was a note. And he took the wallet out of his pocket. And out of that wallet, he pulled a note out that he'd had in there for some time. And he handed the note to me, and there were tears in his eyes. It was a simple note. It said, "Dear Daddy, I'm so very sorry that I disappointed you. Please forgive me." So I read that note, and I handed it back to him and drove away. And I used that Bible until the pages wore out. I used that Bible until the spine on it split completely in 2. Now, this was in 1963. In the late 1970s, my wife died, and I had 4 children.